Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast. Today, I want to unpack something that I see across both early learning settings and also with parents in my clinic. And it's something that's really important for clinicians to know and understand, and that is why therapy practices don't work outside the clinic and what we can do about it. This is a really, really important topic because the whole point of children coming to therapy is for us to understand them and to be able to provide strategies that are going to be applied and usable outside of a therapy setting. However, so much of the time we miss the point and we don't quite get those strategies right, which means that it works in our clinic setting and looks like it's working really, really well, but there's a disconnect with what happens at home and the feedback from parents. This change in expectations and alignment with parent and clinician can really disrupt the therapy and intervention and the outcomes for the child. We need to be making it functional. So I thought today would be a good time to talk about how we can do that and what actually happens and why when we get it wrong. All right, so with that being said, let's get started to today's episode, making our therapy strategies work in real life and real-time experiences.
We are child development obsessed business besties and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzy Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist,
And this is the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast.
Hey guys, how is everyone? I am so sorry. Full disclosure, last week I just ran out of time and I did not get to record an episode. So I think it was Friday afternoon, I was like, uh-oh, I forgot to record this week. So I am so sorry about that, but I am back this week. Last week you got to listen to one of our amazing past episodes. I think it was one of our favorite episodes, or got most listens so far. So I hope you enjoyed listening to that or one of our other episodes. And if there is any episodes that you love or that you would like for us to talk about, I would love you to comment on socials, send us a DM, and just let us know what you would like Em and I, or me at the moment, to talk about, because I'm more than happy to take some questions and requests. But something I've been going through in my training with practitioners and teams at the moment is just making sure that we connect the therapy outcomes to real life situations. I feel like it's something that we can just not quite follow through on, because clinicians can get really caught up in what is happening in that therapy session. Or it might just be missed because we're getting great outcomes in our therapy sessions. So we don't actually necessarily check that it's crossing over, or even like reframe it to make it applicable to school, daycare, or home. And I think this really comes back to understanding our goals and our functional goals and linking our assessments and our measures that we're taking each week to those functional goals. And quite often, we see NDIS goals, they're pretty vague, and it's like being more involved in the community or something like that. It's not very clinical, and it's our clinical responsibility to develop clinical goals within our scope that are going to feed into those functional goals. We need to be able to explain, so we need to identify clinically what we need to be seeing, and then we need to be able to link that to a functional outcome based on their goals. So, what we do at Kids Heart Pilates and what I teach through my courses and my assessment protocol, and you can see it in my assessment protocol as well. And you can download that. You can either get a paid version, which has got everything on it on my website, or you can get the freebie version as well. And I've got parts in that link it to the goals in the assessment protocol on my website that you can purchase. I have got how to develop the goals, the clinical goals, and how to feed that through, and then actually how to communicate it as well. And that is applicable to everyone. It doesn't just need to be for exercise physiologists. So check that out if you are interested. But it's a really important step to, firstly, I think, identify goals. And I know Em has got amazing resources on her website about goals as well and setting goals, because I think that is the first step. And then I think something that potentially gets missed as well is that we don't necessarily have conversations with parents enough. And I guess it depends on how you bill and how you schedule. What we've just introduced at Kids Heart Pilates is a parent session once a term, so that we can actually sit down and go through what we're working on, what we have seen, the strategies that we've tried, and then some strategies for them to try at home. And that has been really well received with our parents at Kids Heart Pilates. So I think that's the two missing points really is one, their goals not being linked between the clinical goals and then the functional outcomes of those, and being really clear on those goals and what data to measure and capture in our intervention. And then the parent piece, which is actually communicating to them. Now, I picked this up probably about 3 years ago when I was working in an early learning center, and I think it's the same theme. I was delivering a program, like an intensive. I was spending a couple of days with this center. I was collecting data, then I was trying some strategies, and then I basically put it in a report to them, what they should be doing and what worked and what didn't work. And some of the feedback that I got was that no one else that had come in had actually known how to adapt the therapy to work in a group environment. And I thought that was really interesting. And I've actually heard that a couple of times. So in Queensland, there's Kindy Uplift funding. So it's funding that goes out to educators to support their development. And this is a program that I offer at Kids Heart Pilates to mentor and provide strategies for educators. But a big part of that is trialing it in the group environment and observing in the group environment. And I think something that's become really clear when I go back to the clinic is that we actually miss out on that because we're inviting them into the clinic, and so much of what we do is about creating an environment that is not going to overstimulate them, that's not going to overwhelm them, it's not going to trigger them, and we're going to make it relatable, and we're going to do all these things to make it a really nice experience for them, which is so important. But of course, we're going to get better outcomes in that scenario when we're creating a controlled environment that is basically specifically created for them to test out different strategies and gather information on that child. So we are doing it in a very controlled way and strategic way that is not necessarily represented in any other area of life. And I think this is the really big thing that clinicians and business owners and educators and everyone really, a part of the conversation needs to be around how can we actually apply this in a group scenario when we've got three complex kids that are triggering each other and we've got a really loud environment or two classrooms in one, or we're in a childcare center and it's so incredibly noisy. All of these things make it close to impossible to get any strategy to work for a child because we are not setting them up for success. And in a clinic, we are setting them up for success. So I think that we really need to be thinking about it. I think the clinic environment is really important to set them up for success, to build confidence, to get them to feel safe so they try things that they wouldn't try at school or in daycare or even at home. It's about being regulated ourselves. It's really that setting them up for success and setting ourselves up for success to get a really good understanding of what is going on for that child in a controlled environment and it might be introducing music or you might have an instance where you have another person in the clinic at the same time or changing it up slightly and seeing how they respond to that and then trialing strategies still in a controlled environment but maybe with one layer of complexity in there. And I think our therapy really needs to be based around collating that data and that observation and detailing what works for them and what triggers them. And then thinking about, okay, so when we've got 50 different triggers, or we're rushing to school and we're late for school, or we're having to wear a uniform that's really uncomfortable, or there's lots of loud noises, or they don't like the traveling and transitioning from drop off into the classroom. So thinking about those situations and how we can set them up for success and parents up for success and educators up for success in regards to what we're practicing in therapy. So I think for starters, we need to be gathering that information. We need to be sharing that information. So as I said at Kids Heart Pilates, we're having parent sessions. This goes for half an hour. It can be done but via phone or online video, or it can be done in person. And we try to do that without the child being there, if possible. And then we also do it with our Kids Heart Pilates program, where we go in and do an incursion plus mentoring with early learning centers. So once a term, we've just introduced a director and educator catch-up session where we're reflecting on this is what we've seen, this is what we've tried, this is what we would like you to try. And we do that every single week, but it's kind of summarizing it and having a designated, almost like a reflection and planning session for that group of children or that child. And I think that I have definitely seen a lot of children in early learning centers and kindergartens and schools. And so I've got a really good understanding of how to make that work in a group environment and how to engage and how to make therapeutic practices translate in a group environment. I think the first step to that is getting out in the community, is offering potentially home visits or going and seeing the child in school or daycare and just seeing how they are responding in that group setting. The other thing is to provide group programs. I know we get so much information from our small group programs, and another one that we get a lot of information is our holiday program. And I think for us, so with our holiday program that we've just got coming up in Easter, we ensure that any new people that come through have a one-on-one session before they go into the holiday program. We do the same with our group programs. We don't obviously do it with our educator and early learning programs, but what we would love to do is to, if they've got funding or their parents, have the budget, is to make that recommendation that it would be really helpful for that child to have some one-on-one therapy with you in the early learning center before the group program, so you can trial some strategies and then try them in real time. So it's about I guess, positioning yourself in the community, in the environments, in the home, and having a combination of all of those to really see, okay, well, this has worked in the clinic. Let's see if this works at home. Let's see if this works at school or at childcare. And then slightly changing that practice or doing trying something completely different because you see that it doesn't work or it needs more of more training, or you need to do some more parent coaching around the environment or more educator mentoring around the environment. So I think that um, it's really important that we're exposing ourselves to this information with our clients. And I think the biggest thing that we can be doing then is sharing that information and making sure we've got designated time to go through our findings and our strategies on a regular basis. And I would be saying every 3 months to then go through and say, is this not working? Because otherwise, we're getting really, really good in a therapy setting and nothing is being carried over into an external setting. And we're still getting dysregulated children. We're still getting, triggered parents and children. We're still getting burnt out educators because they're like, oh, cool, they've done therapy, they're regulated for half an hour or an hour. So what is it? And the other thing that I think we can be doing and is really important is also providing strategies to the children. Now, this is obviously age dependent, but we can start introducing this from a really young age because we can start verbalizing what we're seeing. Oh, that's really tricky, isn't it? Oh, does that feel funny? Or is that too loud for you? All of these things, just verbalizing what we're observing for them to witness it and to experience it and to almost clock what is happening for them and start to do that on a regular basis. And then saying, oh, when we do that, we can move ourselves to a quieter space, or we can actually ourselves control the way that we're speaking. Because if we get loud, then that is just going to make us more dysregulated and probably those people around us. So when we're feeling that really uncomfortable feeling when it's a really noisy area, maybe we need to move outside and just be really quiet for a few minutes. And of course, in theory, that's going to be amazing, but we want to practice that and narrate it and verbalize it in therapy and give them some strategies. Another really good example is bedtime. Oh, bedtime is horrendous. How many therapists, practitioners hear about how bedtime is horrendous and transitions or getting in the car are horrendous? So one I like to do with my own children is we do a stretching routine. And what I've noticed with my youngest is that he crashes all the time. Really, really common before bed. They're tired and they're trying to regulate their bodies through their proprioceptive system. So lots of input required. So anytime he now feels like that, I say, hey, do you want to go and get the weighted balls? And he's like, yes. And he runs and gets the balls, and we do some throwing and catching. That kind of brings him down a level. Then we go upstairs. We do some muscle stretching, and he'll do it himself now. So he'll do a lying down hamstring stretch, he'll do a glute stretch, and he'll do hugging his knees. And then he likes me to massage him or give him a back scratch. But it's all input, right? So, and it's about him even being able to ask for that if he needs that for his body. And I think that advocacy of how I am feeling in this situation and what I need right now is a really important step and strategy to start providing children. So giving them ownership to how they're feeling and what is making them feel like that, and making requests of what they need in that situation when they feel like that. So I think that is something that we need to be doing in every single session. So verbalizing it, sharing with educators and parents. And another really important thing to do is not just work with parents, find out what who the child is spending time with. Is it that they go to daycare 5 days a week, or is it that they're home and they're only in daycare nothing at all, or maybe one day, or they're at school? And so it might be, okay, when you provide this report, saying to mum and dad, hey, I've put my observations and things that we're trialing and the goals for our therapy. I'd really love you to share this with educators and get some feedback. And then let's plan a parenting session in the next 3 months so we can go through and review what strategies are working at home and what's not working at home and at school. So, really collaborating with those key influences and making sure that those therapy practices are flowing through, I should say, to home and real life situations, I guess. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that in therapy, children are generally in a one-on-one setting where they're getting individualized attention and focus of that other person. And I think that very rarely happens these days. And parents are busy. Both parents are generally working, they're busy. You don't switch off because you've got emails coming through to your phone, work calls coming through to your phone. You go to school or sport or pretty much anything, and it's in a group setting. And you've got, complex social settings, whether with friends or family. It's never really straightforward, not particularly for little ones. So I think that that is an important consideration as well, that we are providing one-on-one care. So trying to, even if you have two people in your clinic at one time, trying to kind of collaborate to get a bit of exposure to see what is happening again, and then pass that back on to parents, but also gathering that information. How does he or she get along with his siblings? How does he or she get along at school? Does he have some good social connections? All of these things that are going to contribute to a child feeling safe, seen, and secure to try the strategies that you're providing. Because when they lose that safety, when they're not in a one-on-one environment and they're challenging 25 other kids for a teacher's attention, that's when we're going to see them become dysregulated, and those strategies are going to go out the window. So I think that's a really, really important consideration, something that we see in that transition to holiday program. We always make sure that we're 1 to 4 in our holiday program and in our group programs as well. And that kind of exposes them without it being kind of a 1 to 25. But I think that we need to be providing that one-on-one support. And I quite often say to parents, or to my team to say to parents, that sometimes when kids are really struggling, some one-on-one support is really, really important. We've done this with our kids as well at home. I try to do a one-on-one walk every Friday with my boys. And on the weekend, we try and do some one-on-one as well. And we try and switch it up because I feel like kids will go to their kind of preferred parent. It's really interesting for us because we have got my two boys, and my eldest one is very like my husband, and my youngest one is very much like me. And me and my eldest one always kind of end up together. So the one that's like my husband and I always end up together, and my husband and my mini me always end up together. I think it's just because we complement each other's energy levels. One is calm and one is not so calm. So it's interesting that we've kind of naturally gravitated towards that. So we intentionally try and swap that up on the weekends so that we're really building that bond in a one-on-one capacity, I guess. I think that's really, really important for parents to have that one-on-one time with your kids. And that is something that we got told in therapy, and didn't even occur to us. We were literally traveling around everywhere and doing family things for everything. We were like, okay, we're all going to go here and we're all going to go there. And we're all going everywhere and we all get sick of each other and everyone gets quite dysregulated and just wants a little bit of space. So dividing and conquering is another really good strategy in terms of translating what we have in therapy into home and making sure that they're getting that on a regular basis. So I think that's quite a bit to for you guys to process and try in your practice and start to, I guess, think about. And I think what we need to do is really shift away from just clinic-based therapy. And I don't mean necessarily that we need to take our sessions out of the clinic all the time or at all, but we need to shift our mindset in thinking of just in clinic. Oh, this is working really well, and this, try this and this and this. I want you to think about what would happen if you've got 3 or 4 complex kids, or general day-to-day stresses of rushing, of getting dressed, that really needing to move to certain times of the day, and think about how that would work and some strategies, and then connecting with parents and making sure that they're trying these strategies, and then they're feeding back to you what's happening at school and at home, and if the strategies work or they don't work. Because I think that's really, really important information. And I think the big thing to remember is that this is where therapy becomes really meaningful, when it actually works outside of the clinic and it works outside of therapy. That's the meaning, that's the purpose. And we need to be thinking about that all the time in constructive strategies and ways to help these kids feel safe and regulated so they can thrive in all of these complex settings and environments. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if you've got any questions, or if there's anything you want me to talk about more in the coming weeks, please DM me. And head to my website if you want to see the assessment guide. You can also head to Em's website for her goal work. And yeah, I hope you found it helpful. All right, see you later, guys.